Europe has a number of little-known tax exemptions that allow you to live there and perhaps not pay zero, but to pay a relatively small amount of tax to enjoy the lifestyle, the culture, everything that Europe has to offer and that many people are looking for. Today, I'm going to share with you 9 beautiful places in Europe that you may not know you could live in on a tax-friendly basis. And so when it comes to tax planning, you go to a place like Dubai, you go to somewhere like the Cayman Islands, even a territorial tax system like you'll find in parts of Central America, Southeast Asia. Those may often be cleaner. Some territorial tax systems actually require some planning. So you always want to get tax planning. But European countries are going to involve a bit more planning. I've talked about Portugal's NHR tax system is the Swiss cheese of tax exemptions. It can work, not for everybody, for many people. There's a certain number of caveats and things that you need to do, and you may not be, especially if you've been living overseas already, may not be willing to do those things. But today I'm going to talk to you about these 9 places where you can live in great beauty, and even though it may take a little bit more work, you can dramatically reduce your taxes. If it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We are a boutique consulting firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And you can learn more about that at nomadcapitalist.com. So, talking to 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs, let's start in one of the more commonly known tax havens. Certainly a legacy brand tax haven, as I would call it, is Monaco. It's a beautiful place. If you like marinas, if you like races, if you just like lots of action going on, you like the vibe of Monaco and the French Riviera. Beautiful place you can live in. You're looking at making a multi-6-figure investment into the bank, and you're going to have a property that you're either going to rent or you're going to have to buy something. And so if you're buying, it's going to be millions of euros. And quite frankly, the place is beautiful, and there are some very beautiful homes. But if you're looking at buying something for 3 million euros, don't expect it to be sparkling clean and beautiful and fresh and everything else. This is the place where we discovered a property. Oh, this property seemed like a real bargain. It seemed really small, but it seemed like a real bargain. This was a number of years ago. 600,000 euros. Wow, where did you find that in Monaco? Oh, that's a parking space, right? So you're gonna have to invest a decent amount of money there. If you're French, obviously Monaco's off the table for tax savings, but beautiful place. You can get your taxes down on the personal level to zero. I happen to think it's more of a place for investors than for entrepreneurs and for older people rather than young. But hey, there's that is on the list, and you have everything that the French Riviera has to offer. But you do want to actually plan to spend time in Monaco. People who think they're just going to drop a bag and nobody knows, they're very good at knowing who's in Monaco and who's not. Next up, a place that I recently was in. It's not particularly my cup of tea, but it is certainly a very nice city. It's a fashionable city, maybe not the most beautiful city, but it's a fashionable city. It's Milan, Italy. Italy has different tax incentives, both for retirees, both if you're running kind of like a freelance business, you can dramatically reduce your taxes to as low as 90% below the market rates. You're not going to get it that low in Milan, but you can get it down as low as 70% below market rates. So if your normal tax bill on, let's say, a freelance business or a small business would be, 100,000 euros, you can pay 30,000 euros. And so you can get it down maybe to the teens, the tax rate, living in a place like Milan, or you've got a lump sum tax regime, 100 to 125,000 euros a year, depending on whether you're married or not. And you can live in Italy and basically just pay that lump sum. The cool thing about Italy is you're going to have a little bit easier time working towards citizenship. It's going to take longer than some countries in Europe at 10 years, but you can work towards citizenship. You can live in a fashionable city. So if you like that fashion vibe, I know a number of people who just love living in Milan. The service, from my perspective, wasn't up to par for what you would expect from a city at that level, but definitely I love well-dressed people, just sitting in cafes. It's a cool vibe. Not so far away Lake Como. So if you want to be up at any of those places around the lake, you can take advantage of the same low tax deal. So what Italy's deal does versus, let's say, like Portugal's system, what a lump sum tax does is make all the money you want. It's like a buffet, right? So if you make 300,000 euros a year, paying 100,000, that's not really going to be a great deal. Now, if you want to live in Italy, you can do that, but there's other ways to live in Italy. And at 300,000, you'd be better off probably just doing the shorter term tax reductions, right? So, hey, you could do that and you'd still lower your taxes. But the lump sum is you make 5 million euros and 100,000. Italy's still getting a pretty good deal because most Italians aren't paying 100,000 euros in tax. You're not really using many social services, and your tax rate is now, it's 2% of your income. So that's a good deal. So Milan and Lake Como, beautiful places, beautiful villas up there in Lake Como. Go up and live with George Clooney and enjoy yourself. In Switzerland, the place with the original lump sum tax deal, more complicated than Italy's, has an element of a wealth tax. Nidwalden, just for one example, right? Because not all the cantons have lump sum tax, and so you can't, for example, live in Zurich. Need one. I've had a couple guys go there. Beautiful, just kind of out in the middle of nature. I was talking to someone recently, like, hey, my father just likes to go and hike up the mountain and just hike up the hill and just like, enjoy his life. And there's not like a ton around, but it's just beautiful scenery, beautiful place. Switzerland, everything works. You've lump sum. And some place like a Nidwalden is going to be more affordable than some of the other cantons where you can go and you can live in Swiss beauty, Swiss efficiency, and dramatically save on taxes. Again, same kind of deal. You're going to have potentially in Switzerland a wealth tax component. There's going to be a social component, and then you're going to have the actual lump sum tax itself, which is based on expenses. And so it's going to be more expensive and, again, more complicated than Italy. I happen to think for the average person, Italy gives you obviously a lot more places to live. It's a bigger place. It's easier to work towards citizenship. But if you want that Swiss piece, you can live in a place like that, and a little bit different kind of vibe. Another place that's harder to get into these days is the UK. And so you might say, okay, London's not beautiful. You might want to live there if you like the big city. Why not parts of Scotland? Beautiful parts of northern Scotland. And obviously they are among the more progressive people in the UK up in Scotland. But you can still take advantage of the UK's non-dom tax system. So if you can be non-domiciled in the UK and you can find a way to get residence, they've gotten rid of the investor visa. The other visas that allow you to invest in companies are becoming increasingly kind of challenged in terms of making sure that you're really invested in those. So if you want to be a more active investor, it could potentially work. If you have an Irish passport, you could move to the UK. If you can claim UK citizenship by descent, that may or may not cancel out the non-dom benefits. But if you can somehow find a way to get into the UK, beautiful part of the country, really always enjoyed my time there. So if you don't like cities and you just want to be kind of further out, that could be a system that for a lot of people could be cheaper depending on how much money you're actually living on in the UK. Right? Outside of London and some of the more picturesque parts of Scotland, cost of living could be less. Inflation is over 10% in the UK now, but cost of living in Scotland out there in the beautiful parts could be less. And so you could potentially bring in the money to live on and not actually have a huge tax bill. Certainly it should be less than Switzerland for most people. So Scotland's an option. Dublin and parts of Ireland, right? So Ireland, kind of a similar system. Beautiful country. I love the people. I think people underestimate Ireland, by the way. If you're coming from the United States, I understand the weather's different. After so many years in the tropics, I happen to enjoy some cool weather and the clothing that comes with it. But it's a soft landing for folks where, yes, it was in Portugal, everyone speaks English. They stop you if you try and speak Portuguese. We speak English. Yeah, a lot of these places, they will speak English. Less so Italy, but and maybe less so Monaco, honestly. But I think there's a soft landing culturally, linguistically, in a place like Ireland, which is more accessible through a number of different residence programs than the UK is. So beautiful country. I mean, the West, I think, probably a little bit harder to adapt. But in Dublin, you go down to the south in Glendalough, you go up to some of the seaside areas, you go up to the northwest, in County Donegal. I mean, just some really stunning areas, and you can live there on kind of that remittance base. In Portugal, Lisbon, I don't know that I would say, it's interesting. I don't know if I would say it's beautiful. I think Porto is more beautiful. I think in the south, there's parts of the Algarve that are beautiful. And so if you want that slower paced beach lifestyle, Porto is a place I think a lot of people don't realize is kind of a textile business hub. To me, I always like that Lisbon is a little bit like Washington, D.C. I guess they have business there, but it's more of like that kind of, to me, it seems a bit more officious than Porto, which was always a bit more of the business people. It's smaller, but you can still get there on, let's say, Turkish Airlines. If you're me flying there from Kuala Lumpur, it's still one stop. And so I think that those are two places in Portugal that has the NHR program. People don't realize, by the way, with the NHR program, you can still have your company set up somewhere outside of Portugal. You don't have to move the company to Portugal. There's restrictions on where your company can be. We help people plan that all the time. But you can get your tax rates in Portugal down to the single digits in many cases. And so Portugal will be once you establish the rate, that's the rate. And you're just going to keep paying that all the way up, which is why I say, if you're making the really big money, if you're making $10 million a year, right, then you may find a better deal in a place like Italy or Switzerland, or depending on how much money you spend, Ireland, than you would in Portugal, where the rate just keeps going up. And then also you have Greece. People don't know that Greece has numerous tax incentives as well, including kind of similar lump sum incentives, which again are a bit more involved in terms of investment. If you're a retiree, they have deals for pensions. So you've got 227 Greek islands to choose from. Just had people who were in Paros and Antiparos, a little bit smaller. It's kind of Mykonos, Santorini vibes. I mean, you've got Crete. I think maybe that would be the place I would choose, which is easier to get in and out of. You've got kind of all kinds of different places along there, and actually quite affordable to buy property in many places. The risk of buying properties for so long, people were trying to get rid of their properties. Property taxes went up dramatically, so there is that. But you can just get a golden visa in Greece. It's one of the cheapest in Europe that actually requires a good investment. 250,000 euros, buy as many properties as you want, no donation involved. Harder to get citizenship there unless you have Greek ethnicity is what I've seen. But definitely beautiful islands. And quite frankly, as much as people think, Greece, the service, I found that when you get outside of the resort areas, it's actually not that bad. I fly through Greece sometimes as a layover airport. I've actually found it to be much more efficient than people would expect. It's not perfect. It's still a little bit slow-paced. Athens is, to me, kind of unimpressive. But the islands, where everybody's going, could be an interesting place, and you can live there on a low-tax basis in Europe. So, again, you're going to want some more planning to live there. But for people who are like, I don't want to live in Europe because they just have high taxes, yeah, some of these countries have very high headline tax rates. If you're Italian and you've been an Italian taxpayer, you're not eligible for this system, right? You basically have to almost never have lived in Italy, for example, to take advantage of this system, right? If you're Irish and you're just Irish to the core, yeah, this may not work for you. But if you want to go to some of these countries, you can take advantage of this. It's more nuanced, right? And this is something that if you want some help with, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can learn how we can help.